Christine Lavelle and we're here at Writtle University College today, and our task for this week is to look at sowing vegetable seeds in the garden. So I've got a little patch behind me that's rather weedy. I'm just going to zoom in and show you that just now. And then we're going to weed it, we're going to fork it over, we're going to fertilise it, and we're going to get some vegetable seeds in there. So that's our task for this week. This is the area of land that we are going to cultivate for our vegetables today. So first task is that we're going to take a fork and we're going to weed through the whole bed, taking out, it's mainly annual weeds that are in here. We'll put them in the barrow and then they can go off to the compost heap. I always take a garden fork to take the weeds out. I'll take the weeds out, and then after I've completed that task I'll then go over and fork the border to a fork's depth. As well as the fork, I always bring along a bucket for the weeds. Rather than putting them on the side or then putting them on the path, or if you've got grass at the side, it makes a real mess. And if it's wet or the soil's moist in any way and you put them on your path or you put them on your grass at the side, the soil gets into the grass and makes a mess. So just to be really clean and tidy about your work, have a bucket at the side, and then when you weed, remove the weeds. I always remove the weeds and bash them against the fork here to remove as much soil as possible, because soil takes hundreds of years to form, and then you don't want to be taking it all up your compost heap. Keep as much of it in the border as you can. So I'm just going to go and work my way through this border now. It's quite a nice consistency, the soil at the moment for working. You can see when it's been turned over it's quite moist underneath the quite dry capped surface that you see here, so it's going to be quite easy to work. So let's get going. So when you've weeded an area that you wish to sow, the next stage is to give it a good turn over by your fork to a good fork's depth. So when we say a fork's depth, we mean from the top of the fork to the bottom. So just get that in the soil, turn your soil over, and then I always use the back of my fork to give it a good thrashing to break it up. And then just work your way along, turning it over, making sure that you're breaking it down to what we call a fine till. It's worthwhile spending a bit of time on this, and just moving up, turning over. It takes a while to do this if you're going to do it properly. But the advantage is that when you put the seeds in, into the soil, that when they germinate, if you've got a fine tilth and you've got a good crumb structure, the seed roots will infiltrate, they'll go down into the soil and grow into the soil much better than if you had bigger clods, hard clods of earth like this, where they'd hit it and then they start to grow around it, and then using energy up that they could be putting into growth and new roots, which will make it a better produce for your vegetable at the end of the day. Okay, so that's the next stage to be getting on with. Well, that's me finished this small little patch that we're going to plant up with our vegetable seeds today. It was relatively easy to dig over today because we had rain a couple of days ago and it really has softened up the soil. If we'd done it perhaps a week ago, it would have been a different story. Now we're going to use the flats of our feet for treading. The only time that you would just use your heels for treading is when you're preparing ground for grass seed sowing. For planting or for vegetable seed sowing, when you tread the area down, it's with the flats of your feet. So just going over the area that we've just cultivated, and you get to the end and you turn round and you go back the opposite way. Now the reason you do this is that you get really big air pockets in the soil after you've been cultivated, after it's been cultivated. So this could have detrimental effects in the summertime if you kept these big air pockets in there, that when the roots of the vegetables grew into these air spaces, that they could easily dry out. So you want small to medium sized air spaces within the soil. And then if you were doing this just for, say, preparing for planting, that you could have these large air spaces in there. In the winter time, these big air spaces could fill up with water and freeze the roots of the newly planted trees or shrubs that you put in. So whether you're doing it for planting permanent plants such as trees and shrubs, or you're doing it for vegetables, you would always tread your area before you give it that final rake over to level it. So the next stage is to go over and level the area which you've just trod down. And in order to do that, I'm going to take a really good instrument called the garden rake, and I'm going to take it over and start at one side of the bed and then work to the other. You usually, if you were on a slope, you would start on the highest bit and work your way down. It's quite level on here, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start this side and work my way back. I'm going to break down any bits of soil that are large in terms of the clump size, and then I'm going to work backwards and forwards, just taking any big and large bits of stone or crumbs with me. Raking is perhaps one of the hardest jobs I think some of the students who come to Russell University College have to do. It looks easy if you have someone who's done it a number of times, but to get a good level it takes a bit of practice. I didn't know I could work that fast. We've finished doing the raking now and it's lovely and level. So we'd like to put some fertiliser on next, and my favourite fertiliser to put it on is fish blood and bone. It's a really good organic fertiliser, therefore it's naturally slow releasing, and it can be variable because it's organic, but normally you would have the constituents of N, P and K, that's nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, in the amounts of 5, 5 and 4. So it's a good all-round fertiliser. You could use something like Gromor, which is inorganic, which is 7, 7 and 7. Okay, so it will tell you on the back of either if you've got a small packet or if you've got a large sack like this, it will tell you how many grams per square metre that you have to put on your area, and it will depend on what you're actually putting in and for what purpose. The weights will vary. So for vegetables it's 70 grams per square metre, and here's one that I've produced earlier. We have I had a set of scales and got it to 0 and then put the fertiliser in, and I've got 70 grams of fish blood and bone in here. So before I apply it, I'm going to put some health and safety PPE in place. I'm going to wear a face mask, and I'm also going to put on some gloves in case I've got any cuts in there and the fertiliser gets into the cuts. Well, obviously it's not going to get into the cuts because I'm going to be wearing the gloves. To take you through the different steps now on how to apply fertiliser and this could be for a variety of situations. You would be given the amount of grams per square metre on the back of your packet or your sack of fertiliser, and I always find the best way to do this, if you've never done it before or you haven't done it for ages, is to get a tape measure and measure out with canes a square metre, and then measure out how many grams per square metre that you need. For this situation that we're putting it on here, it's 70 grams per square metre of fish blood and bone, and then you apply this over the surface area of a square metre. So before I do that, I'm going to put my mask on. And then I'm going to apply this over the surface. And then I'm going to apply it over the surface. Okay. Okay, just to say a few little points about the distribution of the fertiliser there, is that you're better off doing it sparingly at first, and which I did, and then went over a few patches that were just a little bit bare. You could actually half the fertiliser and go half in one direction and then half in another, and if you'd used a lot of it to begin with, you just do the next half sparingly on the side that was a bit more denser, and a bit more denser on the latter part of it. So that's got a nice even distribution. Now the reason why I've done it like this in a metre square is you don't have to keep doing a metre square throughout your whole area. You've now got an area which shows you how dense the fish blood and bone should be, or any fertiliser on the surface. So I'm now going to take the bucket and go over the rest of the area, and then just referencing back to how dense it is on here, so you don't have to measure it out every time. Now don't think, because I've got a little bit left in here, that I need to put all your fertiliser that you've got left over on the area of land that you've just fertilised. Even if you've just got a little bit, put it back in the bag, put it back in the bucket for use again, because actually over fertilising can be detrimental to the growth of your plants, as no fertiliser at all can be. I'm just going to rake in the fertiliser now to work it into the soil. And to get a really fine seed bed, it's a good idea to go over it in a different direction. And I might just see if I can get a few more stones off the bed before we actually go and sow the vegetables. So we've raked in this direction, I'm now going to rake in the opposite direction. can see, I'm just taking a few stones off the surface, and the reason for this, that I'm not moving big amounts of soil around, is that it's got the fertiliser on it now. So if I rob Peter to pay Paul, this side will have more fertiliser than the other. So it's just a few odd stones that I'm taking off the surface. So the main job is just to incorporate the fertiliser into the surface. I've got some little friends coming in. We've got a thrush here, or is it a female black? It's a female blackbird. Yeah, we've got a female blackbird in here. My cameraman, Mr. Mick, is a bit of a twitcher, and I wondered if it was a young thrush, but it's a female blackbird. And I had a robin on the fork a little bit earlier. And that's our prepared seed bed ready for vegetable seed sowing. I'm going to be creating drills to put the vegetable seeds in, and in order to create the drills I need to have a straight line, and I use what's called a garden line in order to do this. Now you can buy quite expensive ones from the garden centre, or you can make these rather cheap ones from a couple of shortened bamboo canes and just a little bit of string. I'm going to do the drill now using the Dutch hoe. So just taking a very shallow trench out along the line is ideal. Make few movements on the soil to avoid soil compaction. And then we're going to take the drill to 1.5 centimetres deep. So there we are, it's ready to sow. So we're going to sow thinly along the drill here, and I've got the seed in between my thumb and my finger, and I'm just going to move my thumb along so it distributes the seed thinly along the drill. And any unfinished seed, put it back in the packet for next time. To complete the seed sowing, I'm now going to backfill the trench, otherwise known as a drill, and then just give it a little firming in with the back of the rake. So just using the back of the rake, take the soil back over the drill. And then when you get to the end of the drill, with your rake, just give it a firming in. I do get asked whether we should water it or not, but this soil is really quite moist, so to save on time and effort, I wouldn't really bother watering that now. If it didn't rain within the next week, I would certainly get my watering can out then and give it a good water. But just to make sure that you know where you have put the drill to just completely finish off, and before you take your string line out, I've just got a few things here. Put my rake down safely. I have just got, you could use sticks, or I've just got some cut off bamboo canes. I'm going to put in for the beginning of the drill and the end of the drill. Some people just put it in at the beginning, but I like to know where my drill's gone. and put it in at the end, and then take my line up, and then if I've got more things to sow, I'm just going to move it on and put it into the next drill. But really importantly, you will not remember what you've put in your vegetable bed, so it's really beneficial to make sure that you've got some labels. And being outside, I've got some larger labels than I would normally use for my pots. Or if you're looking for a winter job, you could get some bits of wood and paint them white, and then you could write on them either in black pen, or I've done them in pencil here. So I've got this. Remember to put the date on them, and then you can track how many weeks it is since you've sown them. And then when you get to maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the line and they haven't germinated, you might think, why is that? Well, it's probably because it's still too cold, especially on a night time, for them to germinate. So don't worry, they will come up. The next crop that I'd like to put in is a pea crop. Now the pea crop is a bit different to putting in the lettuce crop. That I've dug a trench out in the soil area here, and it's meant to be 15 centimetres wide, and that's round about the width of your spade. So you can see here, I've dug out the trench, and then in terms of depth, it's got to be about 2 inches, which is 5 centimetres, which is about the depth of your thumb. So we're now ready to put the peas out. The peas should be spaced out about 7 to 8 centimetres apart from each other in the row. And because we've got this big trench dug out, we're going to put one row down one side of the trench and another row down the other. Right, so let's get our seeds out. It's a beautiful day today. The birds have been coming out. I've had robins and female blackbirds. You can hear them singing in the background. I'm just going to keep my seeds safe over here, and then I'm going to space them out. So in the other trench, in the other drill that we did, and when we sowed the seed, that was called sowing thinly in the drill. This is called station sowing, and station sowing is where you position your seeds within a trench or a drill. Beetroot you can station sow as well, but you would do these in drills rather than trenches. And now we're going to cover them back over from the soil that we've got on the side from the trench that we've dug out. Just going to put a peg either end of the trench to make sure that we know where the peas are, and I'll put a label in there as well. And then just firm down the surface of the soil again. And that is your seed sowing lesson for today. Now you've got to get out there, get all your equipment, turn the soil over, get your trenches and your drills done, and happy gardening.